Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Hewlett-Woodmere Public Library's presentation called The Many Lives of Hedy Lamarr. We ask that you remain muted during the presentation, and we will have time for question and answers at the very end. Okay, well, as I say, welcome. My name is Dr. Bill Thierfelder. I'll be your host today. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a retired professor of arts and humanities and a docent emeritus from the American Museum of Natural History in New York. I live in Portland, Oregon, and that's where I'm speaking to you from today. And here in Portland, I'm an artist, writer, and lecturer. But I also return regularly to New York, where I continue my work at the Museum of Natural History. In fact, I just came back from that yesterday. And I also just love to go back to enjoy the wonders of the Big Apple. Now, we have a lovely group today. Nice numbers. That's beautiful. Now, since we can't cover everything in Lamarr's many layered life in one presentation, I'd like to invite you to take a deeper dive on my website, which is makingwings.net, and you're going to take deeper dive 56. Let me illustrate. So it's one word, makingwings.net. And when you do that, you will be brought to my webpage. There's little old me. It says Making Wings. And what you're going to do is you're going to go into the upper left corner, click on what's called a hamburger menu, and you're going to see a lot of things in a drop down. Please feel free to visit any of these. But for our purposes, for these library presentations, we have a whole bunch of deeper dives. Now, Mrs. Lamarr is 56. So you go to this one, 51 to 110. Click on the downward arrow. Don't click on the words, but click on the arrow. And then what you're going to see is a whole list of pages, web pages devoted to presentations I have given or I will be given. This one is number 56. I don't know how 61 got above 56. I'll have to change that later. But anyway, Hedy Lamarr, click on number 56. And what you will be brought to is a page where you can find some recommended media. I'm going to be mentioning this in the program itself. If you don't have a paper and pencil handy, not to worry. Just go to my website and you can copy down authors and titles. I also have some print resources and lots of video web resources. And if you want one of those, so for example, all you have to do is click on one of them. And when you're done, click it off, and then you're back on my page. So it's one-stop shopping. So video, print, information about her children, and a timeline of her life and so forth. So lots of really cool things are there. Okay. So hope you can enjoy that and appreciate it. Now, everything that you're going to hear in this program today uses the web resources and the books that you just saw on my website. But I especially use the following. The National Women's History Museum, the authorized Hedy Lamarr website, the PBS series American Masters, which aired the 2017 documentary Bombshell, and Wikipedia and Britannica. Now, one of the things which you saw, which I just showed you, was recommended media. Now, we have her very candid 1966 autobiography, Ecstasy and Me, My Life as a Woman, Hedy Lamarr and a Secret Communication System by Trina Robbins is intended for middle school readers, but, something that can be appreciated by the adults as well. Stephen Scherer's 2010 biography called Beautiful, The Life of Hedy Lamarr is probably as close as you'll get to the definitive biography. And it takes a very unflinching look at Lamarr's work as an actress, as an inventor, and as a six-time wife. Um, a few other titles that you might enjoy are Margaret Porter's 2018 novel, Beautiful Invention, Hedy and Her Amazing Invention, which again is a delightful book for young readers, but again can be enjoyed by adults, and Marie Benedict's 2019 novel, The Only Woman in the Room, which is really very, very engaging. If you don't know Marie Benedict's work, I highly recommend it. She writes these kind of the literary equivalent of a biopic. She picks usually women across the years, and she writes these novels about them, and they're really quite wonderful. So the one that she wrote about Hedy, Only Woman in the Room, highly recommended. There's also a 2018 graphic novel called Hedy Lamarr, An Incredible Life by William Roy and Sylvain Durange. Another young reader's book by Lori Walmart called Hedy Lamarr's Double Life. But if you have time for only one thing, then I totally recommend the 2017 documentary Bombshell by Alexandra Dean, which went on to win the New York Film Critics Award for Best Documentary. It tells Lamarr's life story, shows clips from some of her best-known films, and includes rare photos and film footage that really finally reveals the brilliant mind behind the beautiful face. And that actually brings us to a great quote that's vintage Hedy Lamarr. You should have a brain as well as a body, which was something she spent much of her life trying to prove to people who never quite thought seriously of her off-screen life, which was truly substantial. So, that in mind, let's begin. Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler was born on November the 9th of 1914 into a well-to-do Jewish family in Vienna, Austria. She was the only child of Gertrude Kiesler, who was a concert pianist, and Emil Kiesler, a very successful bank director. Now, as you can see from the photos on your screen, she really was a very pretty child. Now, Lamarr received a great deal of attention from her parents. As said, Lamarr's mother was a concert pianist, so she made sure that her little girl took piano lessons and ballet class. Her mother also took her to the opera, symphony concerts, and art museums. Her father inspired her to look at both the world of nature and the industrial world. He would often take her on long walks where she would not only appreciate trees and flowers, but the wonders of streetcars and automobiles. One of the results of these walks was Lamarr's fascination with machinery. Now, according to several sources, one of the things she liked to do as a kid was take apart and then reassemble her music box. She was already doing that at the age of 5. Now, why was she doing that? Well, so that she could understand how the machine worked, but just the sheer enjoyment of working with her hands and creating things and inventing things. Now, although Lamarr's brilliant mind took a back seat most of the time, her beauty certainly didn't. While she was taking acting classes, she was discovered by the famous director Max Reinhardt when she was only 16. She studied acting with him in Berlin and landed her first small film role in 1930 in a German film called Geld auf der Straße, roughly translate money on the street. After that, she returned to Vienna, where she continued work in the film industry, first as a script girl and then as an actress. But the big break happened in 1933 when 19-year-old Lamarr, still known as Hedwig Kiesler, appeared in Gustav Mahté's film Ecstasy. In it, she plays a young married woman who becomes involved in an extramarital affair with a soldier. Well, needless to say, Fräulein Kiesler created considerable controversy, especially when she appeared in the nude scenes in several moments in the film. So here, this 19-year-old girl really making a big splash on the screen. Well, in the same year as Ecstasy, Lamarr married Friedrich Mondel. Now, Mondel was a millionaire munitions manufacturer and an arms merchant. Most sources I explored suggest that a combination of his wealth and his charming personality attracted her. Her parents, however, did not approve. They were secular Jews and were probably more than uncomfortable with the fact that Mondel had clear ties with the Italian fascist Benito Mussolini and later to Adolf Hitler. But Lamarr, who was always kind of single minded, she got married anyway. Well, guess what? It turned out Mama and Papa's misgivings were well founded. Lamarr and Mondel's marriage was rocky and short. She said in later years, I knew very soon that I could never be an actress while I was his wife. He was the absolute monarch in his marriage, and it was his marriage. I was like a doll. I was like a thing, some object of art which had to be guarded and imprisoned, having no mind, no life of its own. She was unhappy, especially when she was forced to play hostess and smile, as you can see in the photo on your left. When she was among her husband's business partners and friends, many of whom were affiliated with the Nazi Party, she began to really pay attention to the kinds of things they were talking about. More of that in a moment. Well, she escaped Mondel's grasp in 1937 by fleeing to London, disguised as a housemaid. But what she did take with her was the knowledge that she had gained from those dinner time table conversations about wartime weaponry. Well, while she was in London, Lamarr's luck changed when she was introduced to Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM Studios. This was her ride to Hollywood, and for the next decade, she would wow audiences with her poise, her beauty, and that mysterious accent. And it was Mayer who gave her the screen name Hedy Lamarr. Now, why? Well, according to the British newspaper The Guardian, he named her after the studio's silent era vamp, Barbara Lamarr, intending that her dark, heavy lidded beauty should remind people of MGM's sizzling back catalog and not Lamarr's own. Back in Europe, she had made a film, Ecstasy, that was too hot for MGM's family values ethos. And the rest, well, as they say, has history. So it was a way for Mayer to kind of separate her from those sizzling little films she had made in Europe. Now, in Hollywood, Lamarr was introduced to a variety of prominent actors and characters. And one of those characters was aviation manufacturer Howard Hughes. Now, Lamarr dated Hughes, and he helped to fuel the inventor spirit in Lamarr by giving her a small set of equipment to use in her trailer when she was on set. Now, in addition to the laboratory that she had in her home, the lab on the movie set allowed Lamarr to work on inventions before, during, and after shootings. When Hughes took her to his plane factories, Lamarr was inspired by what she saw. Hughes, he told her, wanted to build faster planes that could be sold to the US military. So, taking that as a bit of a challenge, she bought a book about fish and a book about birds and looked at the fastest of each kind. And what she ended up doing was, in blueprints, combine the wings of the fastest birds and the fins of the fastest fish, and she created a new wing design for Howard Hughes's planes. So his old planes looked like this. But Hedy's new design looked like that. And if that looks familiar, well, it's a design that is still used to this day. Well, upon showing the design to Hughes, he said to Lamarr, "You're a genius." Well, he used the design, but Lamarr never gained any recognition for her innovation, either in the press or financially. Now, what I'd like to do now, see, upon showing the design, he said, "You're a genius." And again, no credit for her financially or in the press. What I'd like to do right now is I'd like to show you a short clip from the documentary Bombshell that elaborates on the Hughes-Lamarr relationship. Now, you may have to adjust the sound on your devices, but I think you'll find this very, very interesting. I'm going to put on clip.
Inventing was her hobby. She not only had a complete inventing table set up in her house, but Howard Hughes gave her a small version of the set of equipment, which she had in the trailer where she stayed in between takes in her motion pictures.
When Hedy first met Howard Hughes, he was dating every Hollywood star, and she did date him.
Howard Hughes, of course, was a great airplane designer, so probably they had a compatible spirit with one another.
It was definitely cerebral, because she said he was the worst lover she ever had.
Howard Hughes wanted to build the fastest planes in the world so he could sell them to the Air Force.
She was fascinated by his mind and his factories, and she wanted to go and see where everything was being made and built, and she met all the scientists. He said to her, "Anything you want my scientists to do for you, just ask them, and they will do it."
He relied on me. I thought the aeroplane would too slow. I decided that's not right. They shouldn't be square, the wings. So I bought a book of fish, and I bought a book of birds, and then used the fastest bird connected it with the fastest fish, and I drew it together and showed it to Howard Hughes, and they said, "You're a genius." And
you did?
Yeah. Yeah. Very strange person that was, very brilliant, but very misunderstood as well.
She invented, during that period, a tablet that would fizz up and make a cola.
I had two chemists Howard Hughes gave me to do that. You know, during the war, nobody had Coca-Cola, and I wanted to compress it into a tube so that servicemen and factory people, all they had to have is water and put it in. But I didn't realize that every state has different strengths of water. So it dissolved on the bottom, on top, in the middle. That was one of my boo-boos. I didn't do that right. Well, but I don't have to work on ideas. They come naturally.
I love that last line. You know, I don't have to work on ideas. They come naturally. Oh, and yes, I that's why I put the word cola there, airplanes and cola. I think it's such a cool idea, isn't it? Cola in a cube. Now, Alka-Seltzer had been invented in 1931, so she probably built on that idea. And of course, nowadays you can, you have little powdered packets and whatnot of things from soda to lemonade to whatever. Well, you can thank Hedy. She came up with that idea. Well, meanwhile, The year after arriving in America in 1938, Lamarr appeared in her first Hollywood film. It was called Algiers, and she starred opposite Charles Boyer. Well, the movie was a blockbuster immediate hit. American audiences were captivated by Lamarr's stunning beauty and striking on screen persona. According to her biographer, Stephen Shearer, when her face first appeared on the screen, everyone gasped. Lamarr's beauty literally took one's breath away. Well, during this same period, Lamarr was briefly married to producer and screenwriter Gene Markey. Now, according to her biographer, Stephen Shearer, because Lamarr wanted to have a child and because she was afraid that she and her husband might be infertile, Lamarr adopted a baby boy in 1939, and she named him James. But in true Lamarr fashion, the story wasn't that simple. For the rest of her life, she claimed that James was adopted, when in fact, she believed him to be her child born out of wedlock in an affair with John Loder, whom she went on to marry as her third husband. Now, of course, that raises the question, did she have pregnancies that she kept hidden? How could she have done that? Well, it's a very suspicious story. Now, in doing my research, there are conflicting reports saying that a DNA test by her other children done after her death revealed that James was biologically unrelated. Yet articles published in sources like the New York Post say that James was Lamarr's biological child. So was he or wasn't he? Now, I have to add at this point that major studios like MGM were not above paying for abortions, hiding pregnancies, or having actresses give up an infant for adoption. Well, regardless, it's a sad chapter for all concerned. Now, when Lamarr was immersed in her inventions during the 1940s, she was also one of the most successful actresses in Hollywood, appearing with several of the best loved leading men of the period. She acted in 18 films during the 1940s, which include Boomtown in 1940 with Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy, Tortilla Flat in 1942, also co-starring Tracy, Samson and Delilah with Victor Mature. So really, she was the it girl of the 1940s, certainly for MGM. And one of her most successful, memorable roles in this period was in the film White Cargo, which was based on a Broadway hit play by Leon Gordon. The film, in which she plays a beautiful seductress named Tondaleo, was one of her biggest commercial hits. I couldn't resist. I have to show you the trailer for that film. And it's kind of interesting when you compare previews in theaters today to previews that were shown in theaters in the 1940s. Here's the one for White Cargo.
It wasn't the heat that drove Ashley crazy. It was Tondaleo.
By the time the sun drops, there's only one thought beating in my mind. Tondaleo, Tondaleo. You tell them that you want to marry me.
Sure. Hawila give me many things. No beat me much, and Tandaleo stay a long time.
I'm the resident in this district, and if she sets her foot in this station again, she'll get a whip across her back if I have to drag her out of your arms to do it.
If he laid a finger on you, I'd put a bullet through him.
One time, Tandaleo thinks she'd like to make tiffin for you.
Maybe I should have let you. Might have saved a lot of trouble.
Of course, I do apologize for the somewhat typical YouTube closed captioning, which slaughtered everything that was being said there. But yeah, that's it. There it is. Tondaleo. Okay. White cargo. Now, if you can move past the wincingly bad dialogue, Lamarr's embarrassing body makeup, and her strange accent as a quote unquote Arab who sounds straight from the streets of Vienna, it's still a lot of late night movie fun. Now, by the way, in the original play, Tondaleo was an African woman, but because of miscegenation laws in the United States, she couldn't be seen as the love interest of two white men. So the film producers decided to make her a dark-skinned Arab. But that really does give you something of the idea of her fame. This is 1942. She got top billing. Well, in this poster, you see her and Pigeon side by side. But in the trailer that you just saw, you'll notice her name comes first. Now, her third marriage to actor John Loder in 1943 produced two children, Anthony and Denise. But like all her marriages, it ended in divorce. And it was during this time that she sent her very rebellious son, James, to a boarding school. They didn't contact each other for over 50 years. Now, more of that as we go on a little later on. But when Lamarr wasn't burning the silver screen with her beauty, she continued her work as a scientist and inventor. And it was during the early 1940s that Lamarr, in collaboration with the avant-garde composer George Antheil, created a frequency hopping system to help combat the Nazis in World War II. The pair received a patent for their invention, though not much recognized during their lifetimes. It served as the basis for modern spread spectrum communication technology, such as Bluetooth. Now, here's a little clip from PBS's American Masters that explains what she invented. And once again, you may have to adjust the sound on your devices. But this goes into it a little bit more in depth.
One day in the summer of 1940, a shipload of children was torpedoed. All hands lost, including 83 children. At the time, the German U-boats were on the verge of winning the war. They seemed to be unsinkable because they easily outmaneuvered the outdated British torpedoes. In times of crisis, most of us feel powerless. But a few discover in themselves unexpected strength. And Hedy, being Hedy, she said, I'm going to do something about that.
So in this article, Hedy says, I got the idea for my invention
when I tried to think of some way to even the balance for the British. A radio-controlled torpedo, I thought, would do it.
A torpedo launched on a given trajectory might need to be changed, redirected. You want, ideally, your launching boat or your submarine to communicate with the torpedo.
The problem is you can't control radio communications. They're not secure.
Your enemy, if they're smart, finds the frequency with which you're talking to the torpedo and jams it.
Jamming. The Germans fill the air with radio interference. Interference.
She came up with the idea of a secret way of guiding that torpedo to the target that couldn't be interrupted, that couldn't be jammed, that couldn't be messed with. It was secret. Instead of just one transmit frequency communicating, she said, what if we change those frequencies constantly in sync with each other? Frequency hopping. You couldn't jam it because you'd only jam a split second of it in a single frequency. So frequency change, frequency hop, frequency hop, frequency hop. That concept, secure radio communications, was brilliant.
And I just want to go back for 1 second.
Brilliant.
The visual there. These are her notes and her drawings. Isn't that remarkable? Well, the patent for that invention expired in 1959. According to the website Global Citizen, the military had already begun to use aspects of the patent on things such as mid-ocean buoys in the 1950s, like the kind you're seeing on your screen. Interestingly, during the war, the Navy it used aspects of it, but it certainly didn't give either she or Antiel credit for it. Well, in any event, when Lamarr discovered that the patent had expired, and this was in the 1960s, she looked into financial compensation for her work. George Antiel, who had contributed some of the mathematical aspects of the invention, had passed of a heart attack in 1959, so it really was up to Hedy to secure their legacy. Unfortunately, she discovered that because she had waited more than 6 years after the expiration deadline, she didn't qualify for any remuneration. So the invention became widely used without any recognition for Lamarr or Antiel. Indeed, according to the Austrian IT firm Dreikreis, today frequency hopping technology is worth well over $30 billion, and that's being conservative. And other aspects of the invention became the basis for Wi-Fi technology, which is worth untold trillions of dollars. As they would say in my old neighborhood in Queens, she was robbed. Well, meantime, during the 50s and 60s, Lamarr married 3 more times, but none of these marriages endured either. Her last 3 husbands were Ernest Stauffer, he was nicknamed Ted, W. Howard Lee, and finally Louis Boys. And after her divorce from Boys, she remained single for the next 35 years. Now, while she was married to husband number 5, Mr. Lee, Hedy built Villa Lamarr on the site of today's Aspen Villas in Aspen, Colorado. Affectionately named by the locals as Hedy's Beddies, the villa became one of the first important ski lodges in the town and began to bring in significant winter tourism dollars. Hedy ultimately gave up the rights to the property in a very contentious divorce, after which her ex-husband Lee married the actress Jean Turney, and they lived in the villa. Oh, ouch. Well, in spite of being one of the most successful leading ladies of the 1940s, she couldn't find much work or success in the 1950s. She acted in only a few films. Her last two appearances were in the box office bomb, The Story of Mankind, in which she played Joan of Arc, and a film called The Female Animal, which was distributed on a double bill with Orson Welles' classic film noir Touch of Evil. Now, the Welles film continues to receive much notice. The Female Animal is, well, frankly, all but forgotten. Bottom line, though only in her 40s, by 1960, that famous beauty had started to wane, and her film career was, for all intents and purposes, it was over. Now, though her career was in shambles, Lamarr was given her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1960 in recognition of her contribution to the motion picture industry. Now, the last decades of Lamarr's life were filled with sad episodes. In 1966, Lamarr was arrested in Los Angeles for shoplifting. Now, the charges were eventually dropped. It turns out that the shoplifting incident coincided with a failed attempt to return to the screen in a movie called Picture Mommy Dead, which actually did come out in 1966. According to QRZ forums, the role that she had tried out for was ultimately filled by another bombshell actress, Zsa Zsa Gabor. Then, move forward a couple of decades, in 1991, she was arrested again on the same charge in Florida, this time for stealing about $20 worth of laxatives and eye drops. She pleaded no contest, and the charges were dropped in return for her promise to refrain from breaking any laws for a year. Wonder how that worked, right? Well, to add to those public humiliations, well, there was something far more serious going on. From the late 1950s and well into the 1970s, Lamarr, like many other prominent personalities, were addicted to methamphetamines thanks to Max Jacobson. Jacobson was a German physician and medical researcher who treated numerous high-profile clients in America, including President John Kennedy. In fact, Jacobson came to be known as Miracle Max, and President Kennedy's Secret Service code name for him, which is the one that really stuck, they called him Dr. Feelgood because he administered highly addictive, quote unquote, vitamin shots that were laced with various substances that included amphetamines and methamphetamines. Now, Jacobson was largely unknown to the public until his methods were exposed by the New York Times in 1972. The following year, Jacobson was charged with unprofessional conduct and fraud, and he eventually lost his medical license in 1975. Jacobson died in December of 1979 without regaining his license. Now, whether Lamarr completely overcame her drug dependency is unknown. But in a podcast interview with her daughter, Denise, that I found online, and which I have included on my website, Denise said that Hedy's drug addiction started even earlier in her career when studio executives fed her pills to keep her vibrant and thin. So as you can see up here, right, Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor, Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, President Kennedy. This guy was really incredible in his dastardliness. Now, another aspect of Lamarr's life that remained basically unknown once she came to America was her Jewish, her Jewish heritage. Lamarr converted to Catholicism to marry her first husband, Fritz Mondel, in 1933, who was himself half Jewish. With persecution of Jews on the rise, Lamarr thought Mondel was a powerful man who might be able to protect her from the growing Nazi threat. Her father had lost. We have to remain. Excuse me. There is a person named Lori who has her speaker on. You have to remain on mute. This is being recorded, and that just interrupted the recording. Please, everyone, stay on mute. Thank you very much. Let me continue. With the persecution of Jews on the rise, Lamarr thought Mondel was a powerful man who might be able to protect her from the growing Nazi threat. Her father had lost his job for being Jewish and died in 1935. Now, 5 years later, when she was in the States, and that's what I've just popped up, Lamarr asked her mother to convert to Catholicism as well. Now, biographers argue whether that was to protect her mother or to protect the story that she was telling in Hollywood about being a Catholic from birth. MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer, who was himself a devoutly conservative Jew, was known to invent biographies for his stars. A young Catholic girl from Vienna was easier to explain because anti-Semitism in America, well, as he was well aware, was quite prevalent. By the by, according to study.com, when Lamarr came to the United States in the late 1930s, she brought her mother with her. And Mama Gertrude died in 1977 in Los Angeles and is buried there. Apparently, all of the Jewish material was news to Lamarr's children when they were interviewed after Hedy's death because they'd all been brought up as Catholics. So even though they had family documents from Austria and Hedy's letters to their grandmother, Gertrude, they didn't read or speak German, so they didn't realize their Jewish heritage. It's yet another interesting aspect of Lamarr's multi-layered life. Now, the decades from the 1970s until the end of her life were marked by ever-increasing seclusion. She was offered several scripts, television commercials, and stage projects, but none piqued her interest. And in 1974, she filed a $10 million lawsuit against Warner Brothers, claiming that the running parody of her name, Hedy Lamarr, in the Mel Brooks comedy Blazing Saddles, infringed on her right to privacy. According to an interview with Mel Brooks that appears as a bonus feature on the Blazing Saddle DVD release, the studio settled out of court for an undisclosed sum and an apology to Lamarr for, quote unquote, almost using her name. Well, Brooks kind of laughed and said that, Lamarr never got the joke. Now, with her eyesight failing, Lamarr retreated almost completely from public life and settled in the Miami area in Florida in 1981. Now, during these last years of her life, in the 1990s, she underwent many plastic surgery procedures, making her, as you can see in that picture on the right of your screen, nearly unrecognizable. This, by the way, is a photo that was taken in 1991, shortly after that second arrest for shoplifting. Very, very sad indeed. And there you can see that it is the last known photograph of Lamarr. even though she lived to 2000. That's the last, certainly public one. Now, in 1990, a major article by Fleming Meeks, Meeks, based on a phone interview, appeared in the May 14th edition of Forbes magazine, and it told the world about her scientific inventions. While other articles began to appear in other publications. What I'd like to do now is to listen to a little bit about how Meeks created that article. Now, one detail I love in this clip from the PBS show American Masters is the fact that the original 4 1990 interview tapes with Lamarr were misplaced for years, but only came to light around the time the 2017 documentary Bombshell was being made. So, go. I'm going to have to adjust your sound, I'm sure. Let me put it to full screen. Here you go.
For somebody to contact me about Hedy Lamarr because I had the tapes. Where did I find it? It's embarrassing. I found it behind that blue trash can. I'd had stuff stowed there and I moved it out of the way and there it was. So in all there were 4 tapes and this is the first one. Ready?
Yeah.
This is Fleming Meeks at Forbes.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for the roses.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I love them.
I'm very pleased.
I was a staff writer at Forbes, and my father was an astrophysicist at MIT, and he called me one day and he said, I've just talked with this friend of mine here, and he told me this amazing story about Hedy Lamarr. And of course I pursued it.
I want to sell my life story to Ted Turner because it's unbelievable. The opposite of what people think. The brains of people are more interesting than the looks, I think. And then people have the idea of I'm a sort of a stupid thing. I never knew I looked good to begin with. Because my mother wanted a boy named George. So unfortunately I didn't become that, and she wasn't too thrilled about that. I was different, I guess. Maybe I came from a different planet, who knows? But whatever it is, inventions are easy for me to do.
Inventions are easy for me to do. Again, such a fascinating aspect of her life. So that kind of gives you the background there. It's fascinating. Yet even as her off-screen genius was finally being recognized, her erratic and reclusive behavior continued to escalate slowly but surely. I mean, she had another 10 years to live. For example, her big lawsuit against Mel Brooks wasn't the only time she went to court. A large Corel-drawn image of Lamarr won Corel's cover design contest in 1996. And for several years, it was featured on boxes of the Corel software suite. When Lamarr saw it, she sued the company for using her image without her permission. Corel countered that she did not own the rights to their image. According to an article on the Wired website, Corel caved in and reached an undisclosed settlement with Lamarr in 1998. And there's the actual original box. Now, in the last years of her life, the telephone became Lamarr's principal means of communication with the outside world, even with her children and close friends. The fine Austrian documentary from 2006, Calling Hedy Lamarr, documents how she often spoke up to 6 or 7 hours a day on the phone, but spent hardly any time with any one person. In 1997, Lamarr, along with George Antheil, posthumously, were finally awarded honored with an award from the Electronic Frontier Foundation in recognition of their contribution to technology. And further recognition finally came from the United States Navy, Millstar, and Lockheed Martin, all of whom have been freely using Lamarr's patents and inventions without sometimes her even knowing it, and certainly without her permission. On January 19th of 2000, Lamarr died in Castleberry, Florida at the age of 85. And the cause of the death was heart disease. Lamarr's ashes were spread in Austria's Vienna woods. A memorial gravesite was erected in Vienna's Central Cemetery in 2014. And the grave marker bears a quote from Lamarr. Films have a certain place in a certain time period. Technology is forever. And you will notice on her grave in Vienna, she's listed as an actress and an inventor. Well, once she passed away, the family drama continued. Now, as you may recall from earlier in the program, Lamarr became estranged from her adopted son, James Lamarr Loder, when he was 12 years old. Their relationship ended abruptly after a long period of disciplinary problems, and he moved in with another family associated with the boarding school he was attending. Lamarr and her son did not speak again. When Lamarr drew up her will a couple of months before her death, she gave her children Anthony and Denise well over $1 million apiece, but left James out of the will. The plot thickens. At the time, James was a 61-year-old security guard in Omaha, Nebraska. Well, before that, he had served on the Omaha police force for many years. During his time on the force in 1969, he fatally shot a young black girl named Vivian Strong. In the end, he was acquitted of manslaughter by an all-white jury, and that set off a 6-day riot, as these photos that I'm putting up on the screen show. Now, for more information about that incident, which sounds strangely current, doesn't it? I put several links about James on my website. Well, when Hedy died in 2000, when he was that security guard working at a mall in Omaha, he sued for control of the $3.3 million estate left by Lamarr, claiming she was of unsound mind when she signed the document. Well, the courts unanimously ruled against him, and he eventually settled for $50,000. Just to complete the story, James died in 2022 at the age of 83. Meanwhile, the other two children, Denise Loder and Anthony Loder, went on to have relatively untroubled and productive lives. Anthony became, among other things, a film producer, and Denise moved to Seattle and became a successful artist. Now, on your screen, you see a photo taken at the 2017 premiere of the documentary Bombshell. From left to right, you have Hedy's granddaughter, Lodi, Hedy's son, Anthony Loder, Hedy's granddaughter, Wendy, and her daughter, Denise Loder DeLuca. So, nice looking family, right? Finally, in 2014, Hedy Lamarr was inducted, finally, into the Inventors Hall of Fame, a long overdue honor. So, what I've given you to this point really is just a thumbnail sketch of a truly complicated woman, an actress, an inventor, a painter, a singer, an addict, a wife, a mother, a recluse. So many different things all wound up into one multi-layered package. So I'd like to end on a positive note with this short review. It's a nice way to summarize our presentation. And as always, you may have to adjust the sound on your devices.
Hedy Lamarr is best known as one of the most glamorous actresses in the early days of Hollywood. But she was also one of the greatest technological minds of the 20th century. She spent her free time inventing items to help the military and learning everything she could from other great minds of the era. Hedy was born Hedwig Eva Marie Kiesler in Vienna in 1914. She moved to Hollywood and changed her name in 1938. Before fleeing Europe, Lamarr left her first husband after attending a dinner party. She went to the event wearing all of her jewelry and slipped out, never to return home. Other versions of this story have her disguising herself as her own maid. Either way, it's pretty cool. That first marriage was to Friedrich Mandl, an arms dealer for Mussolini. Lamarr would sit in on his meetings, making the other attendees think she had no idea about the complicated methodologies they discussed. After learning from her husband's meetings about weapon technology, Lamarr started devising and engineering her own inventions. Her early tinkerings ranged from a fizzing cube that instantly turned water into cola, to new airplane wings for Howard Hughes. Her biggest scientific achievement came during World War II. When she asked to help the troops, she was told to look pretty on a USO tour. Instead, Lamarr came up with the idea for a secret communication system, essentially frequency hopping, designed to keep enemies from jamming radio-controlled torpedoes. Though it wasn't adopted by the military immediately, it is now the basis for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Oh, and she patented this idea in 1942. By the late 1950s, Lamarr retired from film and joined the National Inventors Council. She was once again told she'd be most useful by using her pretty face and celebrity status to raise money. So she sold kisses for $50,000 each and raised $7 million at a single event. Later in her life, Lamarr retired to Florida and kept inventing. She created a pocket on the inside of a tissue box where you could put your used tissues, and an improved version of a traffic light. For her thirst for knowledge and constant striving to help the world with her inventions, we honor Hedy Lamarr, a great life hacker of history.
By the way, the Life Hacker series, you can find them on YouTube, are really interesting. But wow, what a life, right? Quite a remarkable woman. So remember, for more in-depth material on Lamarr, you can visit my website, makingwings.net, and take deeper dive number 56. So now, before we talk about our next program, I thought this would be a time we can end the recording, and it's